Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm coming to y'all with yet another knife review, and this is one I didn't even intend to make because I didn't intend to buy this knife. This was part of an eBay lot alongside something I actually wanted, which was this very old MTech Auto in ATS 34 steel, which has a lot of problems, but it's just a super cool knife. I mean, it locks up absolutely horrendously, and this is as tight as I can get the pivot. It deploys pretty slow, but man, it's comfortable in hand, and this ATS 34 actually does perform really well. So I wanted this knife, but it came with this knife. And I thought, you know what? Whatever. Cheap little MTech. I've used a bunch of them in the past. I do think they're built relatively well. I'll do some testing on it, review it, and give it to a coworker, and that's still what I'm going to do. But I just have to say that this really did impress me way, way, way more than I expected it to. I mean, this is a $20 knife, sometimes as cheap as $10, and it absolutely blew my mind in how it performed. Now, let me be blunt. I'm not going to say that this thing can, compete with the Sanrenmu knives and Gonzo and all of that. I do think that pretty much any knife you get from SRM, Gonzo, Civivi, any of those companies is going to outperform this. However, for $20, I like this better than all the, $20 range Kershaws, Gerbers, CRKTs. It actually performed much better, and I want to kind of get into that. So let's start out with the obvious. It's kind of a cheesy look. I mean, you see these wannabe rescue knives, and it invokes gas station, especially with the skull motif on it. Now, you may dig it. To me, it does make it look a bit like a gas station knife. However, if you can get past the aesthetics, it's a surprisingly functional knife, and it is spring assisted. I'm not a big fan of spring assist knives these days, but if you are, then hey, I mean, this thing actually is a pretty solid assisted blade. Let's start with that blade, by the way. It's a drop point shape, and it is hollow ground from about the midsection down, and it's made out of 440C. Yeah, they actually stamp it 440C. Now, being made in, as you can see there, being handcrafted in West Taiwan, it is going to be Chinese 440C. Okay, 9CR 18 MOV. And to be completely blunt, at this price range with a company like MTech, the heat treats are probably going to vary quite a bit. So you may get one like this, you may get one that performs better, you may get one that performs worse. But what I can tell you is that this formulation of 440C from MTech did quite well. You can see I have quite a bit of wear on the blade, quite a bit of use on the blade, breaking down boxes, going through cardboard, not only at work where I was carrying it and testing it, but also at home. I did my typical 75 cuts through fairly thick cardboard just to see how it would do, and I've yet to test the edge. So we're going to test the edge together, y'all. Yeah, you see, it's definitely dulled, but it will still cut. Not the most cleanly. This is thin magazine paper. So, you see, it does still cut. And I bet I could bring that back to a razor edge. As a matter of fact, let's put this piece of paper aside. Here's a honing steel. Let's just hone this up. And it's kind of awkward doing this around my tripod. And this is nothing special. This is just a honing steel like you'd have in your kitchen. Tore that time. However, it did bring back a pretty solid usable edge. Better than it was after just a few strokes on a honing steel. I personally call that impressive. I have seen so many AUS 8s, 8CR 13 MOVs, 7CR 17 MOVs, and similar steels just completely blunted to where they needed a real sharpening, not just a quick honing touch-up. And if I spent a little more time on there, I could probably get this even better. So that's honestly, to me, a very impressively performing 440C for the price range. Now, again, I believe in transparency. If I were to bring in basically any knife from Gonzo, I find that their 440C, also Chinese formulation, will perform better than this. I have had my experiences with Gonzo's 440C is that it holds a better edge, but I've certainly used 440C that holds a much worse edge. Let me see if I can grab it. Got a bunch of my knives laid out to the side. Example is Boker Plus's 440C has been pretty hit and miss. In this particular M-type, I haven't had the best luck with its 440C. It's okay. But, you know, this particular formulation is harder for me to sharpen for whatever reason. The MTech, not so much. So I'm actually kind of impressed with its blade steel. Okay, drop point shape, kind of a drop point spear point hybrid shape, and it is a 3.5-inch long blade. Now, you can see that I do have some damage here toward the tip, and that is from when I was outside cutting the cardboard. I ran this thing into the dirt because I didn't care. You know, it's just a user. And you can see it does have a little bit of deformation toward that tip. Something you could easily take out by just taking this against a somewhat coarse stone. The coating, for that matter, has held up well. You can still see a lot of the gunk on it, but the coating has held up really well to all of that cardboard cutting, which tells me it'll probably wear better than a lot of really, really cheap Teflons, which again is surprising just considering who makes this knife. Okay, you can see their MTech USA Xtreme Ballistic. On the backside, we have MX-A803 440C stainless USA premium design, handcrafted in West Taiwan. So yeah, definitely a big fan of the knife for the money. Okay, moving on to deployment and lockup. Sorry about that. I was looking at my notes to make sure I wasn't forgetting anything. Deployment speed is quite outstanding. I mean, it is a spring-assisted knife. Wouldn't expect anything less. The spring kicks in quite well. You can deploy it either via the thumb studs or the flipper tab, and both work quite well. The lockup, up and down is tight, side to side. I do have a little bit of wiggle now. I didn't before all that cutting. I do now. We could easily adjust that out at the pivot point. So I'm going to call deployment and lockup good for the price level that we are at. The handle is 4 3/4 inches long, and it's made out of G10. It's that kind of typical Chinese G10, not super grippy, but it does provide some grip. And we can see it as a liner lock design. Here's the lock engagement. And you can see in that pivot point, it's riding on one phosphor bronze washer and one Teflon washer. Bit of a weird system, but if it works, it works. These steel liners are not skeletonized, and that does cause this knife to come in weighing a bit more. Let's go ahead and put this on the scale. And let's start this thing out with weighing in grams. Okay, 141.6 grams. And 5 ounces on the dot. So exactly 5 ounces, which isn't the heaviest knife in the world, but for this size, it's on the heavier side. It's on the heftier side. So yeah, we do have some jimping on the G10 here, and it is quite functional. The handle's a little bit blocky, okay? So in hand, it is a little bit squared off. It's not uncomfortable, but it's not a melt-in-your-hand kind of knife. It's serviceable enough. And then we have, you know, kind of the gimmick situation here of that seatbelt cutter. How functional is it? Well, I haven't tested it, so let's test it for the first time together. Here I have some 550 paracord. Let's get that in here. And the answer seems to be not very. And you can see I've actually moved that blade out. It looks like it's missing the backing to one of those screws, to be fair. So perhaps that has something to do with it. However, in my experience, almost none of these belt cutters are actually all that useful. So I'm inclined to believe it's just not a very functional design. But that's fine. I can get past it. It's not a deal breaker to me. Pocket clip is a loop over deep carry clip, which a lot of folks will love. Probably won't love that it's right hand tip down carry only. Not a big fan of that. So that is a bit of an unfortunate thing, but it's not the end of the world. We do have a glass breaker at the end there. Again, probably more of a gimmick. However, in a self-defense situation, it does make this one hell of a Kubaton. So it does actually have some realistic, practical, real-world application. So where does this knife sit for me? I would still personally buy an SRM or a Gonzo before I bought this for myself, if I was, specifically just looking at this knife. However, I would certainly pick this over the majority of Kershaws and CRKTs and Gerbers that hover around the $20 price range. It has better steel than a lot of those are using. Okay, I'm not just talking better than the crappy 3CR13 that a lot of them are running. It has better steel than a lot of the 8CR13s that Kershaw runs and CRKT and other knives run, which is honestly getting harder to find at the $20 price range from those companies. Here's a Kershaw and 8CR13 MOV. I actually really enjoy this knife. I will be doing a full review on this knife. Solid knife, good performance. This does perform better. The steel on this actually does perform better. This is kind of a budget Kershaw killer, which to me is absolutely insane considering it's from MTech. I will state that this handle is quite chunky, so it is fairly thick. It is a mostly flow-through pillar construction, so it is easy to blow this out with compressed air if you get a whole bunch of dust and debris in there, which is always a plus. They make this in a wide variety of versions, by the way. There's half-serrated versions. There's versions with desert tan G10 handles and all sorts of different colorations and variants. So if you're interested in this knife, you can shop around and find the version that you like the best. I like it. I'm a fan of it. I think it's a fairly solid knife for the money. It wouldn't be my first, second, or third pick necessarily, but honestly, you can do a hell of a lot worse. And what's embarrassing to me is how good it got the spring assist design compared to a lot of other knives. Okay, let's bring in this knife. This is a 511, and this is the fastest assisted opening knife I've ever used. I mean, this thing is just unbelievably fast. However, that's because the spring tension is so ungodly strong that you have to put a lot of pressure on the knife before it deploys, and it hurts your frickin' thumb. Okay? This is a $100+ knife. $100+. And its assisted opening is worse than this $20 MTech. Okay? Let that sink in. Just let that sink in for a second. How good is the MTech assisted opening? Okay, here you go. Here's a zero tolerance 0350. Love this knife. Carry this knife a lot. It's assisted opening. The spring assist works just as well on this MTech as it does on the zero tolerance. Okay, how's that for a comparison? So, should you pick this thing up? I mean, if it appeals to you, if you like the look of it, maybe you like the skull motif, maybe you do like the glass breaker on it and you think it would be a good self-defense knife, which it would function very well in that role if you needed it to, I think. I know a lot of folks would go, I would never trust my life to that. Guys, the reality is people are killed with junk every day, and this isn't junk. It would absolutely serve if you, God forbid, had to defend your life. So if it's something that appeals to you, you like the look of it, maybe you have a friend or a coworker or a relative that needs a knife and they would dig this skull motif, yeah, it's worth it. For $20, it's worth it. And sometimes you can find this as low as $10. At $10, it's a no-brainer. At $10, this might be one of the best $10 knives I've handled in a long time. Mostly because inflation has caused all the old $10 samurai moves to double or triple in price. But honestly, you can do a whole lot worse than this MTech Ballistic. It certainly has impressed me.